there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. We have a super fun card today to create, and we're going to start off with a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card base, and then I have 2 more panels which are also 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. Now all of these are made out of 110 pound Nina Solar white cardstock because I wanted a nice heavy cardstock that would support today's design. Now I am starting off with some rectangle dies to create a frame. You might already have a frame that you could use as well. I am taping them together to hold them in exactly the same place because I'll be running this through on all of the pieces of cardstock. So this first one here that I'm doing is one of the card panels. So it's just a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card panel. And I'm going to run that through my die cutting machine so that I can get all of these bits and pieces here. And then I'll pop them up the top of my screen and I will run through the second card panel, which is exactly the same as this one. And I am just eyeballing it, and I had plenty of luck eyeballing it, but if you are not sure about it, just get out a ruler and you can measure it and make sure it's all lined up. But I just placed that same frame that we taped together and die cut the second card panel as well. Then I am going to take only the larger die because that's the one I need for the minute. And here is my card base, which is just a normal card base. And I am going to place that right in the center, just as we did with the 2 panels at the top. And I'm going to keep my card closed when I run it through my die cutting machine because I want the front and the back of this to die cut exactly the same. Now you may be able to, depending on your die cutting machine, it may cut through both layers, it may not. Mine almost cut through all of the 2 layers, so I actually just used a wee pair of fussy cutting scissors here to finish it off. However, if not, just run it back through again and you will have plenty of success. So I have the smaller die here and I have just used those 2 panels that I cut from my card base so that I have 4 of these smaller die here. So the inside of those top 2, and then I die cut another 2 just from the leftover pieces of my card base. So now we kind of have all these frames. Now I am going to do a little bit of double-sided taping. So I will speed through this, but basically you want to do the front and the back of your card base, which now at the moment I know it looks a little bit funny, but it'll come together, and we are going to create an acetate card base. So I want there to be a see-through panel around the whole card. Now, I had this idea in my mind and I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't realize how much I would really like this card when it came out. This was super fun, and everybody who has seen this card so far is kind of amazed by it. It's kind of one of those ones that you definitely look at and look closely. So it was pretty fun to create. Now I have put double-sided tape on the just one side of those 2 frames, and then on the card base there I have put it on the front and the back. Now I am going to put my acetate down here, so I'm taking off all of that release paper on the adhesive, and I've cut a piece of acetate down to about 4 by 5 1/4, just give or take so that it covers it up. There's a couple of different ways to make sure that you get your top frame on nice and straight. The first way here is, like I put all my layers on, to just take down a little corner of each one, and then once you have it in place you kind of press it all down and then pull out those little flaps that we have. And then the second different way I'll show you in a minute on the back of this card. But we have the front complete, and now I'm going to do the same process on the back, remove all of the double-sided adhesive release paper, then pop down the acetate, and the second way here is just to release those 2 sides, and then the ones that still have the release paper on so they're not sticky, I line those up first, and once they're lined up I push down on the sticky part and then I take off the 2 remaining release pieces of paper. So it's all lined up perfectly, and here is our card base. I love this. It is very sturdy, just as sturdy as a normal card base would be, because I didn't want it to be delicate or flimsy or anything, so that's why I used some nice strong 110 pound paper, and the acetate helps keep it all really stable. So now I have a piece of vellum in my MISTI, and I am using some StazOn black ink, and of course I am using my little Letter It All It's the Little Things stamp set here. and it says, "You're the greatest, let's celebrate," is the little sentiment for this card today. Now I've popped it on some vellum because I'm going to create a little front to go on our card, because obviously at the moment everything is very see-through and we need to not have it that way. I am giving my vellum a very quick heat set and moving my heat gun around a lot so that I can heat set that StazOn ink and I know that it won't smudge or go anywhere, because that's obviously really important when you're working with a sentiment on the front of your card. So I have this little panel here. So this is one of the 4 panels that we die cut at the very beginning. And to decorate this, I have this flower set here, which I've been using lots recently and really loving. I am die cutting it out of some 3mm white foam. Now you can use 2mm white foam, works perfectly fine. Just whatever you have, it can be any color at all, and we are creating some of our own stamps. So all I do is I stick a little bit of double-sided tape on the back of my stamps. Now you'll know that these foam stamps kind of end up having a front and a back. So you know, the pretty side and then the not quite as cut nicely side, just like normal die cuts do. So we want to have the pretty side upwards so that we get a really nice stamping impression. Then I pop these onto my acrylic blocks. I just did the medium and the small and then a leaf from my favorite daisy set. I'm popping these on, and you can see here that from the die there is those little impressions there, and you will see these come up when we stamp them as well, which is really cool. I'm using some VersaFine Clear, the Cheerful and the Tulip Red here. And then I also have this extremely old stamp here. This is the Faded Text Background from Stampabilities, and I am positive this is not available anymore, but just use any stamp that you have in your collection to do a little bit of stamp kissing. Now I'm just putting the red ink down on my woodblock stamp. I am inking up my flower stamp in the yellow, and then I just wanted to quickly show you here before I actually stamp on my project. I'm sure you have seen this technique before, but if you haven't, here is what it stamps like normally, just using the yellow ink and stamping my foam stamp. And then remember, I put the red ink on the little word stamp there, so if I just gently push it down onto that, pick up some of that red and then stamp it down, and it creates a lot more interesting kind of texture to our otherwise relatively plain stamping. So that's what I'm aiming for today. You can definitely use any stamps or anything you want to decorate this front little panel. I'm going to come back to my little panel now and add a little bit more red so that I know where I have removed ink from the previous stamp, and ink it up with the yellow, then put it onto the word stamp, and then stamp down onto my project. Now I also am going to include in the leaves, and I'm just going to leave these plain. So I just want them to be the plain green because there's already kind of busy enough features going on with those flowers. So the leaves are going to be plain, and I'm going to do it again, pick up a different spot where I know I haven't removed that red ink and pop one down the bottom. Now I must say, when I finished this panel, I was like, I really didn't plan that out very well at all. I wasn't impressed with my placement, but that's okay because I just want to make the most of it, and I was determined to use this piece no matter what. So in the end, you don't end up noticing how not onto it I was with my placement of my flowers, but that's okay. Again, the little yellow flower I just did plain as well and had the 2 feature flowers there. So that's my little front, bright, nice, easy panel. And I just wanted to show you guys that if you clean these off with a baby wipe or a wet towel or a wet cloth, anything that you have near, you can use these again and again and again. You can see I'm pressing down really hard and there is no transfer at all of ink. So you can definitely use these again. I have this little stitched banner die here, which I'm going to die cut out our sentiment, which we stamped earlier on with the StazOn ink. I'm going to run that through my die cutting machine, and I'm making sure to leave a little bit up the top because I want to adhere this down onto my little card panel that I've created, but I don't want anything to show through the vellum. So in this case, I am just going to bend over the top part of it, fold it over the top, and that is how I will adhere it down. If you're having trouble keeping it nice and flat, you can try a couple of things, such as making sure the score line is really well scored and well folded. However, if that doesn't work, then you can add a couple of really tiny little liquid glue dots just behind some of the words, and that will keep the little vellum flag down. But I didn't have too much trouble once I used my scissors as a bone folder. That's not a clever technique, don't follow that one. So here is my card base, and I kind of was having so much fun playing with it, I must admit. And now I'm going to pop some double-sided tape on the back of all of my 4 panels here, after I choose another good song, of course, to listen to while I'm crafting. And once I've got the tape on, I'm just going to place the very front panel that we created. And again, I'm just eyeballing it because I find that easiest, but definitely measure if that's what you find works best for you. This next one is easy to pop on, and then to line up the third one so that it is directly behind everything, I use a little bit of removable adhesive, and I will link these all down in the description box below. I'll link everything I can find at least. Then I remove the paper, pop it down on the panel before, and then just take that off with my finger, and it's all nicely lined up. Then of course I want one at the back as well to hide all of that little adhesive, and that is our card finished for today. This is definitely a favourite, and I've had some amazing feedback and comments from friends and family who have seen this card and really love the style. Thank you so much for joining me today. Let me know what you guys think of this card, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks, bye!